Thank you very much, Honorable Chair of the session, Co-Chair, my fellow panelists here. First of all, I'd like to thank the Indian Association for Pollution Control here for inviting me, giving me an opportunity to share some of the thoughts on energy transition. I see a number of eminent people present here. I think this is a wonderful gathering, and compliments to the association for really thinking about this conference. And I think we couldn't have asked for a better start than having the Honorable Minister here setting some tones and some of the trends. I mean, his deliberation was more of a technical, I see, because he was aware of several trends, global trends that were there. So I have few slides here. I thought I'll share some of the thoughts I have gathered from various trends that we see in the world, and I thought they are relevant when we talk about energy transition and energy as such also. We must be conscious. We have not been really conscious, and we don't really pay so much of attention when we use energy actually. And therefore it's time now that every person really spends time and thoughts on this energy. Some of the thoughts, and I'll just go ahead on this. So I'll talk about energy, the future of energy, some of the global trends, some of the emissions trends, and what do we see up to 2050 there. Some of the global energy mixes, how the primary mix is changing, and those trends in the world. Some thoughts on the decarbonization, net zero emissions. Also very interestingly, some of the studies that, for example, several scenarios have analyzed the whole world and sort of segmented into 10 different segments based on the energy usage trends on that. That's very interesting, and we'll see how India and this part actually is looking at. And then when all this energy transition is taking place, what is it for oil and gas industry, the energy industry, how they are coping? It's not very easy to transition to a desired net zero economy in given time frame. So I'll touch upon some of the points here. I thought they would be perhaps interesting to all of you. Now, just a few thoughts that, energy is essential for everyone. We all know that. And we must also recognize that directly or indirectly, it is the sun which is the source of energy, for all energy on that. Energy also, we have learned in our physics, chemistry and all, that it's not consumed, it converts to other forms also. So we should be conscious of that when you use actually energy. And also we should know that our choices to use energy has impact on so many things. And it's therefore very essential to really look at what kind of impact is there and then make your choices there. Also, we should be conscious that the true cost of energy is more than just few dollars and cents. It's a very important thing, because we must take the consequences of the choosing energy source, as it has economic, political, social, and environmental factors attached to it very, very closely on that. And therefore, the use of, or the choice, a decision to use energy cannot be taken in isolation today. That would be wrong. Well, there are several scenarios. There are number of organizations, world organizations, companies who have done tremendous amount of work on these scenarios. They have developed their own tools, mechanisms and all. And I'll be discussing some of them. Actually, the affordability, when we talk about energy, we must be also talking about sustainability. And we know that of the 17 goals, UN goals on sustainability, at least 3 of them touch very closely on the energy. Affordability, well-being actually. You will be surprised to know if you see the data as to how this pollution, and particularly from energy sector, I mean, I come from an energy sector, oil and gas sector, how much pollution can have an impact on the health and ailments, particularly in the developing countries, is amazing actually. We don't know, we don't pay that attention. So there are sustainability goals which really overlap all the aspects of mankind, and recommends that we should be conscious when we take decisions pertaining to energy. So these new tools actually utilize number of artificial intelligence and so many new modern tools in that to come out with their the scenarios, the economics, demographic factors, energy prices, state of technology, innovation, deployment, and also the policy framework where the governments, companies have committed themselves. They've all dovetailed into this to develop those scenarios. And I've used, there are a number of them, but I've used 3-4 of them which have really done extensive work and which relates to everyone, including India. So what are the trends? If you see, mankind has been always looking for a better, cleaner, efficient energy. So if you see in 1850 to 1900, it was mostly the biomass that was used. From 1900 to 1950, we came to know, the new sources, coal, oil, and that. But from 1950 to 2000 had a tremendous economic development, and there we saw what we can perhaps call indiscriminate use of energy sources, actually. And there was a rapid rise in, standards, large consumptions, higher aspirations, and all this. That all resulted in very high consumption of, and there were energy, and therefore no regulatory mechanism to really do that. Very little on that aspect, and its impact, adverse impact, was not known to many of us. If we see in the present time, the period for about 2015-16 to 2050, then there are some significant differences how the energy consumption is there. Number one, that while the economy is slated to grow, the GDP to almost double in that period of time, the energy consumption is slated to grow just about 14%. So we see for the first time, there is no direct linkage between the energy demand and the economic growth. This is happening for the first time. We also see, if you see on the bottom, decreasing growth of energy from this phase of 1950-2000, where it grew 2.9%. It is slated to be in this period below 1%, and in fact 0.1% in the last 2 decades on that. So there's a significant change in the trends of energy consumption, and we should be conscious of that. Sorry that too much of this thing in that, but very interesting slide where you have the scenario. This is a study done by DNV, and they work on a best estimate. So they take all the scenarios put together based on interactions with all the stakeholders, and then they work out what is the best estimate, while the others have 3-4 scenarios, and they develop on 3-4 scenarios on this. Now, they also have inculcated all the information, even policy framework, commitments, technology, and most importantly, the behavioral aspect of people were also included in the study. So this has said that if you see 2014, the first on the other side, the coal has already peaked, that has gone by. Oil, some companies, some studies have said that it is peaking now, or is saying that maybe next 2 years, 3 years. Most of the scenarios are quite harmonious in their recommendations. There may be some differences in the period, in the timelines, but more or less, generally the trend, and that's very encouraging to understand that this is what is likely to be happening on that. We see that the primary energy supply and demand would peak around 2032, 2034, and then there's a decline energy. So there are many things that are happening on that. Natural gas, which is, we'll discuss a little later also, one of the fossil fuels which is lasting longer, or maybe the longest among the others, is going to peak around 2035. But if you see, most important thing, nuclear, 2037. If you see the greener part, the significant part is the greener part of this, which from the present around 19-20% renewable, cleaner energy. By 2050, it is going to be more or less 50-50. So this is a dramatic change that is going to happen, and it is only increasing. The rate of change of this trend is only increasing. While the mankind has seen not just one energy transition, number of transitions, as I showed you in the previous slide. But this trend is different because it is driven by certain very committed goals, objectives, and the space of this change is tremendous on that. So this is how it looks like, that the non-fossil part is now increasing, and by 2050, we hope that it would be around 50-50. So we should be prepared how we are going to meet our energy demands on that. Now, coming to specific sources of the primary mix, what changes are envisaged? Look at the blue one, the wind. What a tremendous change from now to 2050. See the solar, tremendous change like the wind. Hydropower, some increase, is a cleaner one. Another thing, important thing, is the bioenergy. Mr. Gadkari talked about bioenergy. This is an area which is very fast growing in this. So where it is decreasing actually, let's look at that. The first one is the coal. Look at less than 50%. Oil, almost 50% usage of that. Among the fossil fuel primary energy sources, the only gas which is able to sustain up to 2050, maybe this is a source which is more friendly, efficient, may last even beyond 2050 as well. And if you see that this is a marginal dip only in the overall percentage mix on that. Nuclear, more or less same, is driven by many other aspects on this. So the clear indication that the fossil fuels, coal, oil, are going to play lesser role in the future in the energy mix, and it is going to be the cleaner wind, solar, bioenergy coming up very, very quickly, and also that the gas among the fossil fuels only is able to sustain for a longer time. Gas, when you talk about gas, we must relate to India also. I think this is one thing which I like to make just a comment, that in India we have not really able to capitalize on the advantages of natural gas. Shifting from some of the sectors to gain immediate benefits, dividends of the emission control, could have been shifting from, particularly in the case of like power, from coal to gas. But because of the competitiveness and adverse market pricing, we have not been able to really do, although the government made it desire very clear that let's transition to a gas-based economy, but I don't think we've been successful in this actually. So if you summarize what all is happening in the energy transition, number one, pressure is mounting as emissions are set to remain high even up to in 30s. That decarbonization is on the agenda, and industry and government are sort of agreeing to work on that, but not at a pace which would really give good results on that. Hydrogen and carbon capture have the potential to make a dramatic change. We have to see. There's a lot of talk on hydrogen. I look forward to presentation from my colleague. But I think we must recognize it has its own challenges. Production of hydrogen, storage of hydrogen, transportation of hydrogen, all are very, very difficult, challenging aspects of this business economy. And therefore, in my opinion, it's going to take a lot of time to really be taken as a universal, good, clean energy source. Yes, there are applications where it could be perhaps produced and used there itself is very successful on that. So I think we need to recognize that, this aspect of this hydrogen. And the world is moving from more oil to cheapest as demand declines actually on this. It's a very, very interesting thing. There have been multiple energy transition. We have seen that in all scenarios by all organization companies, they have said that gas is set to continue as a favorable fossil fuel out of all the fossil fuels. And within the gas business, it is the LNG aspect, the LNG market, which is actually growing. And since it gives a lot of flexibility to take gas to those areas which are not connected with pipeline, remote areas on that. So there's certain advantages on that. So these are the summarized kind of a trend when we see overall energy transition. This is an interesting study done by McKinsey, just about 2 months old actually, where they have worked out 5 scenarios and these scenarios are like right now we have fading momentum, that whatever commitments are there, we are not able to meet that, so it's a very sort of disappointing one. Then we have the current trajectory as to what we are doing or the countries are doing or the companies are doing, just follow that. Then we have further acceleration, that you put in more efforts, more resources, and really act on some of the initiatives to reduce the emissions on that. And then is the achieved commitments, that you not only make commitments, but also achieve that. You have an action plan to achieve that. And the last one is, of course, the 1.5 degree pathway. So they've tried to analyze on these 5 different scenarios, and most likely they focus on further acceleration as one of the things that the countries and companies are capable of following. If you see on this, the kind of temperature increase that is related to that, you can see the present one is actually maybe more than 3 degrees actually. They say more than 2.4, but it's perhaps more than 3. But further acceleration is about 1.9, which is more promising one. And achieved commitments are even better. So those not only make commitments, the countries or companies, but also have an action plan to support that and follow it up. I think they're much closer to that. And we see some of the regions in the world who are not really making commitments, but are actually acting on that. Also related to is the carbon dioxide price when it comes to this thing. And this price, they have worked out that at these prices, it makes sense to trade carbon dioxide and put taxes on that. So it is doable at that. So it ranges from $50 to 1.5 pathway, which is more than $200 a ton. So I think this is a very interesting scenario they have developed. And let's work on that how it looks like from the emissions point of view. Again, a very recent study where all these 5 scenarios they have plotted on the emissions. So what are the highlights of this is that 2019 we had the dip in the industry, COVID impact, and the growth was less, the consumption was less, and hence the emissions were less. In fact, one of the things they had said that if COVID had persisted, same trend for another 20 years would have taken us to close to perhaps 1.5 path. But that's a very, not a sensible thing to really think about. But if you see, 2023 is the decline of the emissions globally. All scenarios say that whatever actions are being taken by countries, companies, would result in the decrease of the emissions. So 2023 looks to be as the peak, and then it declines on that. And we see that the further acceleration, the comparison between the further acceleration and the achievements, they're about 30% lower in that. So although there are improvements, there are good scenarios where we're trying to achieve that, but all scenarios are far away from the 1.5 degrees pathway. So there is no way that we see globally the world is going to achieve that target unless some more dramatic things are happening and are made mandatory to really implement for everyone on that. If we see from the energy mix point of view, then we have seen that the share of fossil fuels is falling from 80% to almost around 30% by 2050. In the accelerated and net zero, what 4 scenarios that McKinsey has worked on that. And I think the important thing here is that the declining importance of fossil fuels is offset by increasing role played by renewable energy, very clearly on that. And whose share is the primary energy from existing about 10% is going to increase over 50% by 2050 in the likely accelerated and net zero scenarios there. So these trends towards lower carbon mix within primary energy are less pronounced in the new momentum. New momentum is another scenario they worked out where it is nowhere near actually on this. So I think the important thing is just see within the renewables, we have the traditional biomass, the modern renewables. The modern renewables are very interesting, and I'll just share one slide on that. Hydro, nuclear. So they occupy this thing, and a lot of growth, new developments are taking place in the modern renewables and the biomass, particularly on this. So very clear. Yeah, okay. I think I'll go back to just the last slide on that, perhaps. There are many things that we can talk. When we talk about energy transition, we can talk for hours actually on that, and that doesn't permit here, but so many things are happening. Maybe I can show this slide and then perhaps the one India-specific slide. So if you see, another trend is, within the renewables that are coming up, electrification of the energy is a very clear trend. So out of the non-fossil renewable, if you see, electricity is going to be around almost, if it's a pink, is growing around 2.8%. So electrification of energy system is a clear trend which is happening world over that. Also, you see that the energy intensity is decreasing, very nice, because of the efficiencies of the consumption of energy is improving. And also the energy consumption per capita is also decreasing. So I think clear trends have been there. Within the contribution in the electricity, we talk, which is the most growing sector, it is the renewables which are contributing on that. So I'll just pass on that. This is the biofuels. Very important thing is edible sugars, edible oils, waste oils, which are very polluting. Waste oils, lignocellulosic and other waste products, plant products, are all great feedstock for bioenergy actually. And therefore, this has a very promising growth here. And a lot of work has been done, and there's a significant amount of contribution is expected to be there. So, well, I'll not talk about decarbonization, and only one point, that we need to really have behavioral change if we really want to achieve net zero or reduce the emissions. If we don't have just the thought process or discussion, will not help. It is the behavioral aspect of each individual which really contributes on that. That's very important. And some of the new initiatives, like the minister talked about carbon dioxide, capturing carbon dioxide and storing somewhere else is one thing. But converting into a more reusable fuel is something great. This is what is happening at some of the new projects at MIT, where they're converted into a fuel. And there are several projects, and driven largely by the automotive, road transport or aviation sector, because they consume, and they are also seen as a major polluter also. So capturing and converting carbon dioxide into renewable, and it is a renewable new fuel, is perhaps one of the developing trends in the world, which is very, very welcome thing. And there are several projects, big project, pilot projects are over now, commercial projects are coming up. Just a quote from Elon Musk, he said that fuel cells are fool cells, And then he followed it up that hydrogen fuel cells make no sense, I mean, he's so much focused on EVs. I'll just come to, these are some of the carbon prices, which are scenarios which are likely, and they are presently maybe around $30 also, one can really trade them. These are the segments world has been there. This is about specific India. I'll just show one slide, yeah. So if you see what is all happening, the coal dependence is coming down, but it need to come down sharper. And that can only happen, although there are six-fold increase in the installed wind and solar capacity, but still it is not sufficient to really bring down the coal part of it in lower. When the gas is there, the gas-fired power capacity has tripled, but this is a problem area for India. I am not able to really understand why the peak hour power or other things, can be really shifted to gas-based and get really some benefits of that, there's something which is a problem area for India. I think I'll just put it that if we follow 1.5 degree path, that would mean shutting down of several million barrels oil and gas producing facilities, which I feel is very difficult. We can't do that. So the challenge is, how do you transform them into cleaner ways of doing things? And that's what the oil and gas companies are working, and that's a challenge which we can discuss. Some of the areas I have identified where the oil and gas companies are venturing now. Some of them are leaving hydrocarbon and going into renewable energy, solar, offshore solar, or carbon capture like that. So I think this is just an indication of hydrogen, that there is a whole demand and driven by largely road transport and aviation. But I think there are challenges. We must see vis-a-vis challenges on that. There are many things that we can discuss on that. Well, I'll stop here. Thank you very much for that. Just a part here. I'm associated with the coal gasification. I think for the India-specific thing is we have huge resource of coal. The challenge is, can we make coal greener as a fuel? One of the areas that we are trying, and the government has come out with a scheme of coal gasification. And I'm associated that hopefully we'll be able to really have come out a new business venture, a cleaner energy source venture by gasifying and using it, capturing carbon dioxide there itself. Okay. Thank you very much.